Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a fall wreath using a holiday stencil set from Hero Arts. This stencil set is a part of their recently released holiday catalog for 2022, and I can't wait to show you how I flip it on its head and use it for fall. Let's take a look at the products we'll be using. First up is the Holiday Layering Wreath Stencil from Hero Arts. I'm also going to be using a couple of die sets. The first one is the Autumn Bouquet, and this is an older stamp set, as well as the Autumn Leaves fancy dies. All of this is from Hero Arts. We'll be using a couple of Hero Arts dies as well. We're going to be using Lemon Drop, Green Apple, and Root Beer. I have a couple of little mini cubes of Hero Arts inks that we'll be using as well, and that's going to be in Moss and Creamsicle. This gold hero paste is also a part of the new release, and let me tell you, this stuff is fantastic. And then of course, in order to spread the hero paste, you're going to need a palette knife. So I have a little palette knife that I'm going to be using as well. Let's get started. So I'm bringing in the wreath, the color layering wreath set from Hero Arts, and this stencil set has 4 pieces to it. For this card, we're only going to be using 3 of the layers, or 3 of the pieces of the stencil set. So we're going to use the larger stencil, the smaller detail stencil, and then the little berry stencil. We're not going to use the holly leaves. That would make it more of a holiday card. So we're going to layer these up, and we're going to place them in our MISTI to make it easy for us to get great alignment. So I'm going to put that largest stencil, the largest area, into my MISTI, and I'm going to size up my paper to kind of see where I want my paper to actually be. I want the wreath to be in the middle, so I need to figure out where exactly that needs to be in order to make sure that it's in the middle. I'm putting some repositionable adhesive on the back of my cardstock, which, by the way, this is Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock in 80-pound weight. This is my favorite go-to cardstock for card panels. And now I'm just going to place that stencil right in the corner of my MISTI. This is going to give me perfect alignment each time I place my stencils in to layer them up. So I decided to go in with the Root Beer ink for my first layer. And I'm actually going to bring in a second brown color from Hero Arts. And you'll see that in just a minute. But I'm going to go in with the Root Beer, and I'm just going to saturate the entire area of this stencil with this Root Beer ink. And so you can see I'm moving in clockwise and counterclockwise motion and direction, because this stencil has some quite picky and particular little areas in it, which I love because that gives us great detail. But in order to make sure that you get into all of those areas, you do want to go clockwise and counterclockwise. So now I'm bringing in my second stencil. I noticed when I first put it down, it wasn't lining up like I know that it should. So I turned my stencil around 180 degrees, and then I was able to get the alignment that I needed to get. So I'm bringing in some Cup of Joe. This is a darker brown ink, so it's going to allow me to get this finer detail in a darker color. So it's going to give us a little bit of depth and dimension in the wreath part. So I'm going to lay down some of that, and again, I'm going in clockwise and counterclockwise motion. And you can see here, I've laid down quite a bit of that ink to get a really dark impression through this stencil. And once I pull that stencil back, you can see all the fabulous detail we were able to get with these 2 stencils thus far. So again, this is going to be a fall wreath. So I want to kind of create some gold berries. So that's where this gold hero paste is going to come into play. Look at that beautiful, beautiful color. It's so shimmery and just a great medium to use. Very, very easy to use. And for the stencil that I'm using it on, I don't need a whole lot. So I'm just going to kind of tap in and get a little bit of this on my palette knife and scrape that into the open areas of my stencil. I can see this being, using this for a holiday wreath and making some beautiful red berries as well. So I'm just going to go around and layer this gold hero paste into those holes and get that gold hero paste down on my inked up images here. So let's take a look at what this adding that hero paste does. It's a nice amount of shimmer that's added to this and just the right touch of intrigue to take it to the next level. So off camera, I went ahead and die cut lots and lots of leaves in several different colors. You can see I've got several different shades of yellow, green, red, orange. I mean, just all the fall feels. And so what I'm going to do is, in order to add a little bit more dimension to my my die cuts, I'm going to ink up the edges with a little bit of that lemon drop ink. I'm using a small detailed inking brush from Simon Says Stamp, and I really like these because the head of the brush is so tiny that it allows me to get into the small little spaces and pieces without saturating the whole die cut, because these die cuts are kind of small. So I didn't want to cover up the whole die cut, just a little bit. And so I used that green apple, and now I've moved on to Creamsicle, and then I also used the moss on some die cuts as well. I brought in a little bit of Festive Berry. I don't really have a great red color in Hero Arts inks yet, so I used my Festive Berry Distress ink to color in the red. So I have a couple of pieces of shafts of wheat and some acorns here. So I'm just using that root beer ink once again to ink up the wreaths, wheat, and give that some color and depth. I wanted the acorn tops to be darker, but I didn't want them necessarily inked up. So I decided to bring in an alcohol marker in a darker brown color, and you'll see in just a minute what adding that alcohol ink to the top does. I think it really makes it pop. I've set my background aside while we were doing all the inking, which gave the hero paste time to dry. Now that it's dry, it's time to go ahead and assemble our leaves and our wheat and acorns. So when I'm doing a card like this, I like to do like a dry fit. I just try to figure out what color and where I want different pieces to be. So I decided to do the wreath, or the collection of leaves and the wheat and the acorns on the side of the wreath. If you've ever made a door wreath before, you know you can place the bow and your centerpiece or your florals in either the top, bottom, sides, wherever you want them. And so I particularly like to have my floral collections on the side. And so that's what I did with this card as well. So I got my wheat shafts down and I glued them with some Barely Arts glue. And now I'm going to come in with the leaves and kind of place them around. So I've got like 4 colors of leaves, but within those colors, I've got various shades of that color. So there's a couple of oranges, a couple of reds, several greens, and several yellows as well. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of using a good mixture of those colors to, again, give me some depth and dimension to the leaf collection that I'm putting on this card. So this is a fabulous tip that I learned from Jennifer McGuire, and that's to use a piece of press and seal paper so that you can, once you lay all your die cut pieces out, you can use that press and seal to pick everything up and it stays in the position that you dry fit it in. I have used this tip over and over again. As a matter of fact, that piece of press and seal that you see there, I've probably used that at least 5 times already, and it still works, still picking up stuff. So that allows me to keep that initial collection of leaves in the exact arrangement that I had it in. I thought I decided to go ahead and extend my wreath collection a little bit, arrangement a little bit further. So I'm going to come in right now with a couple more of those leaves and kind of extend the leaf arrangement further out than what is currently on my press and seal paper. So you can see me there. I'm just kind of taking it and extending it a little bit further. And so once I've gotten those down and in place, then I'm going to come in with that press and seal. I put a little bit of that Bearly Arts glue on the back of those leaves. And now I'm going to press those into place so that they can have an opportunity to secure themselves to the panel. Pressing all of that glue into place, and now I'm ready to peel back that press and seal. You do need to go slowly when you're peeling your press and seal back, just to make sure that you leave the parts and pieces where you have them, instead of them coming off and then you're messed up your arrangement. So I've gotten that in place, and I think the next thing that I want to do is add a bow to my card. Excuse me. So I had some twine on hand, and so I decided to take that twine and make it into a bow, a little bow with several loops on each side, and I'm going to trim up the tails to make sure that they're even and secure this bow to my card. So again, I'm coming in with that Bearly Arts glue, putting some of that onto the card panel, and I'm going to press my bow into place. And so I'm going to put some reverse tweezers on that bow to make sure that it secures and dries in place exactly where I want it to be. And while that bow is drying, I'm going to go ahead and get my acorns ready. So I'm going to place the acorn in the middle of the bow, which means that the acorn needs to be popped up because that bow is textural and dimensional. So I need to pop up my my acorn in order to make sure that it fits appropriately. So I'm stacking 2 pieces of my foam adhesive here to the back of my acorn, and I'm leaving a little space for the middle of the bow to fit in between my popped up adhesive there. And now you can see that fits very, very nicely on the front of my bow, and it makes a great finish to this card panel. So now that I have my card panel completed and I'm ready to go, I'm ready to adhere it to my card base. I'm going to pop up the entire panel using a piece of craft foam that I've cut down to fit the back of the panel. So I've secured the craft foam to my card base, which is made out of accent opaque 120-pound weight cardstock. And now I'm going to secure my card panel to that craft foam. By the way, all of the products that I'm using today will be listed and linked below, as well as on my coordinating blog post. You can find a link to my blog below in the description as well. So overnight, I was thinking about the card that I had finished. I had finished this video and was ready to go. I thought about that detailed stencil I had used, and I said to myself, what if I took that same stencil and just turned it around and used it with a different ink color? I wonder what results I would get. And so here we are making a second card. So I'm getting myself set back up in the MISTI with that detailed stencil from the set, and I'm going to put my card panel down with some repositionable adhesive. And I'm going to ink up the open spaces with some root beer ink to get started. This root beer ink, again, is my lighter brown, so I'm going to use that for my first layer. So I'm tapping off a little bit of that root beer ink, and I'm bringing it in with my ink blending brush, and I'm going in a circular motion, clockwise and counterclockwise, to make sure that I get good coverage in this intricate and detailed stencil. So we're ready to pull that stencil back, and you can see what we've achieved. It looks a lot like the original card that we made. So now I've turned my stencil 180 degrees, and you can see the open white spaces there. That's because we've turned the stencil around, and this is not a symmetrical stencil, so we've got some new spaces and places to ink up. So for this, we're going to be using Cup of Joe ink. This is a darker brown ink, and so it's going to look great alongside that root beer ink. It's got good coverage of that down, and let's take a look at what we've created. Now this to me looks like similar to a grapevine wreath that is often used for fall wreaths. So I was very, very happy that I decided to come back and give this type of wreath a try. So remember, I had plenty of leaves that I had die cut from my original card. So I've gone ahead and secured those down to the card panel. This time I placed everything at the bottom of the wreath. You'll also notice that I did not use any of that hero paste on this card as well. But don't worry, I am going to bring in a bit of gold in just a little bit. This Thankful for You sentiment comes from the Pumpkin Bunch stamp set that is also a part of the holiday release for 2022. So I'm just stamping that in some black ink, and that's giving me a great sentiment for the middle of my wreath. So again, I've popped this panel up with some craft foam, and I've adhered that craft foam to the panel, and now I'm adhering the panel to my card base. Same type of paper was used for the panel as well as the card base as previously before. So I decided to add a few gold baubles to this card to just add a little bit of sparkle and shine to it. And I think that makes for a beautifully complete card. So let's take a closer look at both of these cards. Here's the second card that I created, and using that one stencil from the set and just turning it around. I encourage you to do that with some of your stencils and play with them and explore and see what you get. Here's a close-up of the first card that I made, and you can see there's lots of texture and dimension on this card, which will make for a beautiful presentation to someone during the fall season. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please consider giving it a thumbs up. You can always join me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my blog at thedeltacrafter.com. Until next time, enjoy!